You know, researchers after researchers have confirmed that Indian political, sociological, economic, and political establishments have been powerfully influenced by these two thinkers. And afterwards, Kenneth Galbraith came here, a great friend of Pandit Nehru, and he said, I can't understand, India is a functioning anarchy. That it is an anarchic society, but surprisingly it is functioning also. And we quoted all this. We defined ourselves through Karl Marx, through Max Weber, through Galbraith, and came Professor Raj Krishna. He was asked why India is growing so slowly. He said it is Hindu rate of growth. This was 1978. That's how we defined India. India was defined by people who had nothing to do with India, nothing to do with understanding the Indian society or Indian civilization. And a remarkable U-turn took place in the world about which no one has cared to understand. That in 1970s, when Japan began rising as an economic power, the West was surprised. Because economic development, economic progress is supposed to be the preserve of the West. How could Japan, from Asia, an underdeveloped place, a place which is condemned not to develop, a Buddhist country, how could it develop? And so one Paul Bayrock, a Belgian economist, made a thorough study of the economic development of different nations from 1750 to 1918. And he came out with a surprising finding that in 1750, if you draw the economic development statistics of the world, it would look like this. China, 32.8% share in global GDP. China was the top country in 1750 with 33% of world GDP. India second with 25% of world GDP. UK, one of the last with 1.8% of the world GDP. America with 0.1% of world's GDP. He said these are the structure of the world economy in 1750. And India went down from 24.5 in 1750 to 20 in 1800, 17 in 1830, 8 in 1880, 1.7 in 1900. In just 150 years, the Indian economy, the Indian polity, the Indian society, the Indian civilization crashed. And the same thing happened to China. From 33% in 1750, China became 6% in 1900. And in the same period, UK and US, which had just 2% between them in 1750, their share went up to 41% in 1900. This completely transformed, paradigm shifted, transferred the power, economic power, political power, cultural power, civilizational power from Asia to the West. When Paul Bayrock came up with this theory, the West was stunned. Ferdinand Braudel, a very well-known French historian, he said that Europe, unlike today, far from having reached a level of wealth vastly superior to the living standards of the rest of the world, it's not correct. Others had much better standard of living than us. Then Bayrock and Le Boya, they wrote in 1981, it is very likely that in the middle of the 19th century, the average standard of living in Europe was a bit lower than the standard of living of the rest of the people in the world. This shook the West. The West was always superior. How is it that the Western researchers have shown that Asia was a mighty economic giant and India was an economic giant? And so this job was given. Even London Economist noted it in 1990. Then Angus Maddison, the greatest economic historian ever, he was given the responsibility by the OECD countries to test and verify whether Paul Bayrock's research was correct or not. It was not a single man's research. They instituted what is known as a Development Studies Institute. All the 20 countries funded it, and he was given a fleet of research scholars to work with. And Angus Maddison started his work like this: if Bayrock is right, then much more of the backwardness of the third world, that is Asia, presumably has to be explained by colonial exploitation, and much less of Europe's advantage can be due to scientific precocity, continued slow accumulation of wealth, and organizational financial superiority. You cannot say it happened, our growth happened because of this. It has to be with colonial exploitation. This is how Angus Maddison started the work and said that Paul Bayrock cannot be correct. And Angus Maddison came out with the final conclusion in the year 2001. Until June 2010, Angus Maddison kept on publishing his researches, in which he said he drew a 2000-year economic history of the world, starting from the first year of the common era called AD. He said, if you look at the economic statistics in the year 2000, in the year 1 of the common era, India tops the world with 34% of world GDP, China next. In the year 1000, if you draw the economic statistics, India still leads with 28%. In the year 1400, India again leads. In the year 1500, India again leads. In the year 1600, China overtakes India. In the year 1700, India overtakes China. And Angus Maddison came to the conclusion that Indian economic crash occurred essentially and wholly because of colonial exploitation. When I mentioned this to the IIT students, scholars, researchers, academics, they were stunned. No one knew. And Adi Gandharaj was also there. It's all available on the YouTube. You can see both the lectures. And after I completed the lecture, and of course I said more, which I will say here, and all of them came and surrounded. Sir, you don't stop with giving this lecture. We want you to run a course for us. And I ran a course for them in the first quarter of this year. I took 21-hour course for the entire MBA students, in which many research scholars, academics also participated. Why I am mentioning this is that the tallest educational institution of India had no understanding of Indian economic history, which is now proved. Actually, if you want to look at the Angus Maddison's work, he is known as World Economic History, a Millennial Perspective. It is available on the internet of OECD even today. You know what is OECD countries? It is 26 richest countries in the world, and its statistics are most trusted and relied upon. It is that OECD forum which has declared this as the most authentic economic history of the world. The benefit of this study, Karl Marx did not have. The benefit of this study, Max Weber did not have. The benefit of this study, Galbraith did not have, nor Mr. Professor Raj Krishna. But still, day before yesterday, I see articles being written about the Hindu rate of growth. You can understand the divergence between the truth and the myth. The myth about India, which has settled in our mind, has made us debrand India, devalue the Indian society, and all the problems of India we attribute to the Indian society. Take, for instance, just the gender phenomena. That Indians kill their girl children. All of us accept it. But from 1901, statistics is available. In 1901, the gender ratio of India was 972 to 1,000. It was the highest in the world at that time, 1901. The world average is even today 960. 972 to 1,000 was the first Indian census calculation of gender ratio. In 1951, it became 946. In 1991, it became 927. In 2011 only, it has moved up to in 2011, it has become 940.